That's the name of our show.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome to the Halloween episode of The Large Glass.
Yes, we are not in Teeny's Bar tonight.
We are not. We are aboard a certain well-known starship.
Yeah, I will say that our ship was having some problems today.
Yeah, so we had major problems today. First of all, we are not live like we normally are. We are doing this show recorded because
our ship crashed into Teeny's Bar, and then we kind of took a break for a little bit, and then we tried to get back on the ship, but then that wasn't working. But now we've got the ship working. We gave it a little bit of a tune-up, and we're just going to go ahead and coast along, and hopefully we don't have any more problems.
I ejected the entire dilithium crystal chamber out into outer space so it could just fuck off, because this is just driving me crazy. I've rebooted the computer, I've rebooted the streaming service, and finally we just apologize to all of our viewers and let them go to bed.
Yes, but to be a little bit zen, sometimes we learn a lot from mistakes and things that happen. You did a lot of problem solving, so we're doing great tonight.
What really happened is I broke the computer by putting all these, like this ship, for example. This, just didn't get along well with our CPU, and so things just didn't go well.
Yeah, I think the computer just couldn't handle our awesomeness tonight.
Right.
So.
I mean, look at her.
Look at him.
No.
Look at the ship. This is awesome.
Anyway.
I don't know. I love Halloween. This is my favorite time of year. I'm so excited to be here.
We picked out 3 artists that kind of have a certain kind of Halloween bent to them on some level. At least they're a bit on the creepy side, I would say.
They are. So they're perfect for the season, and it's going to be a great show. This is our 6th show.
6th episode. We're really excited. We have finally made it to affiliate status on Twitch, which was one of the things we were looking for. Yep. And
So big thanks to all of you, and thanks to all of our followers, and especially thanks to the people that tried really hard to tune in tonight to see our show, but it just wasn't working out. We told them, we gave them a little bit of a preview of who we were going to have, so they shouldn't be too surprised. But that really meant a lot for us, for the people that hung in there and tried to watch when we were having glitches.
Thank you to you guys. And also, if you're new to this, or you're watching us on YouTube, or you want to come watch us live on Twitch and participate in the chat room, you can, number 1, like us, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, and 2, come on over to the Twitch side of things, follow us, consider becoming a subscriber. There's all kinds of ways you can support our show. We are trying to bring art to you. We believe art is for everybody. We are both artists, and we believe in talking about it at home. We collect it, we make it, and our show is really about bringing that to all of you.
Yeah, and it's really about the interaction, which is the unfortunate thing with the whole YouTube thing. We're doing the best we can, but sometimes the interaction, what you say, actually adds so much more to the whole concept of what we're doing. So
right. So if you're watching this after the fact, we miss you, and our chat room is currently sitting here idle, like our ship is idle, and we'll do the best we can. We're still going to bring you these artists. We're still going to talk about them. Yep. We're still going to do a little bit with our anecdotal stuff, and we're going to read to you, and all those great things.
All that good stuff.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about the stuff we normally talk about? So we were talking about, last week we were trying to get up to our followers, but now we want subscribers.
Correct. Subscribers, and again, you're watching on YouTube. We're actually looking for subscribers on Twitch. So if you decide to go over to the Twitch side of things, consider being a subscriber. We give away art on our show. We give it away. We do raffles every week. Last week we gave away a Jerry Saltz book and one of my drawings. This week we had intended to give away a cast edition piece of sculpture by a great artist who's a friend of mine. We're going to save that till next week. So if you catch this episode now, come out on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. We stream every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. So you have a chance to win that.
I was trying to think. I'm already thinking of wow, what can we do to have that be a giveaway? Maybe we can ask a question from the show that happened today or something like that, but we'll worry about that when we get there.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
All right. We'll work that
in. Make it fun.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, we also normally pour a glass. The show is called The Large Glass, named after Duchamp's famous work of art.
Yeah.
But we also like to tote a large glass, and tonight we are drinking champagne. We often tell you guys what we're drinking.
Yep, because it's Halloween, it's a celebration, it's our 6th show, so we figured cheers.
Cheers. Wait a minute. We're supposed to look at each other when we do.
Oh.
So, little Tattinger for us. All right, so let's jump into a few things. So first of all,
Did you want to talk about the bits too, or?
no, because that's a Twitch thing.
So
we can
we'll
leave
talk about
that.
that
That's
later.
this is. You guys will come over to Twitch at some point and see us there, and we'll talk about
tell
all
you
that
all
fun
about it.
stuff.
Yeah.
So some fun stuff that happened this week.
Yeah, we can. Well, why don't you? You would never know what happened to you this
Is
week.
the problem. Yeah.
It's a miracle.
It's a miracle. So first of all, something that happened this week that I want to share, and I have to show you a photo of it on my phone in order to actually legitimize this, because the scab that I'm supposed to have from this thing is barely visible. You can sort of see a line down my face right here. But earlier in the week, I went out to take care of the chickens. Now we have chickens, right? And so I opened the chicken.
7 of them.
We have 7 chickens. I opened the chicken coop door and to feed them and clean out their water. And I know. So go ahead.
I told him not to do that. They're big girls. I was waiting for them to fly out of the coop, which.
So one of them flew off of her perch, talons extended, right at my face, and gashed my face in the most lovely way. So there's the cut that she sunk. Now, chicken feet are disgusting.
Yeah.
They're disgusting. So the first thing I think is, as I'm bleeding in the chicken coop, is I'm going to get a staph infection,
Yes.
or I'm going to get sepsis, or something. So I race in the house. Do you remember when Lucy got kissed by Snoopy and she ran around screaming, dog germs, dog germs? That's what I felt like at that moment. I was just like, ah!
I've been attacked by a chicken.
Yeah, I've been attacked by a chicken. So anyway, my scar is almost gone. I don't have a badass scar to kind of come on the show with. But so that was my event for the week.
Yeah, we were expecting it to be here, but
not here.
alas, it's gone. It healed.
So what do you got?
Good. Well, going along with the Halloween theme, I was going to talk about, traditions with that and what we normally do for Halloween. So, pandemic has certainly put an interesting spin on things. So, but every year, there's a pumpkin carving in our town. And who started it?
We did.
Yes. And also our good friends and neighbors, Dave and Audrey.
Yes.
So this year, well, normally, and I've only been coming to these things for a little while. Like, this was long established before I came upon the scene. But it's been growing. It started off as a small event with you and the neighbors.
Correct. It started out with about 12 people came over to the house with pumpkins, and we carved pumpkins one night. And the following year, we invited a few more. And the following year, we invited a few more. 10 years later, we're up to about 120 people. We get food trucks.
Yeah.
And it's a real community event. It's
really
a big
is.
deal.
So it's not only carving pumpkins, but then the pumpkins, well, they're judged. So that's
We were
pretty
judging.
cool. And then there's prizes and stuff like that. But in the community, there's 2 bridges on the road. And what happens is all the pumpkins are taken out to the bridges, and then they're lit up.
We light them every night. We put them out on the different podiums that are along the bridge, and they look really beautiful. They really
Beautiful. And last year there was like a torrential downpour all day, but it still worked. We still had a great turnout. There was like 100 people, and then there was like a ton of pumpkins on the bridges. Now this year, because of the pandemic, there wasn't a big pumpkin carving.
We called it off this year.
Yeah. But we still managed to carve quite a few. We weren't 100 pumpkins, but we still managed to carve quite a few.
We carved like 18
Yeah,
pumpkins.
and some of them were pretty creative.
Yeah, I thought they all were pretty creative.
One you kept for yourself, but we won't talk about that one. And then
Drive by my house and you can see that pumpkin. Otherwise, I'm not telling you about it.
yeah, but then we set them on the bridge, and Audrey and Dave go out to light them every night.
Yes.
And they look pretty good. So it's a way to keep up a tradition. It's not perfect. Hopefully next year we can do a big pumpkin carving, but that was a little bit of a letdown.
Well, and currently this situation that we're sitting in right now is substituting our normal Halloween event also, where we're not dressing up and going out. We're dressing up and hanging out on the starship that we happen to have orbiting the Earth.
This is kind of cool. I like this.
Yeah, I like this too.
Yeah.
This isn't bad.
Yeah.
It's a good way to spend the inside time. So, anyway, Let's see. You want me to read?
Yeah, we can do a little bit of a reading.
All right, so every week we talk about how you can get over your fear of making art or your fear of talking about or looking at art, right? So we've been reading from Jerry Saltz's book, How to Be an Artist, and I have found the chapters in this book to be incredibly valuable. And I have a chapter for you tonight that I think is... I think it's relevant, especially with some of the artists we're going to look at, which I always try to pair up a bit. So let me grab that and give you a quick tidbit of this. Now, it's short. It's not something that we have to roll our eyes, that we're going to be spending too much time in this. But this time we're going to be reading chapter 30, See as Much as You Can. Critics see by standing back, by looking at the whole show, comparing individual works, marking advances, regressions, repetitions, failures within the context of an artist's previous work and that of their peers. Artists see very differently. They get up very close to a work. They inspect every detail, its textures, its materials, its makeup. They touch it, look at its edges, peer at the object from every angle. You can always tell the artists in museums. They're the ones with their faces 1 inch from the surface of a work, like one dog sniffing another. What are the artists doing? They're seeing how it was made, what techniques, ingredients, gestures, and accidents are in play. When I've asked artists what they're looking at so intently, they always say things like the shininess, the bumpiness, the scratches on the side, the way it's mounted, the printing technique, the pink styrofoam backing, how they left the flies in the surface. All these little matters loom large when they appear in someone else's work. This is why all artists know that bad art teaches you as much as good art, maybe more. So, as an artist and one that's very invested in technique, I can absolutely back that up in that I cannot walk into a gallery. I can barely walk anywhere without trying to figure out how something was made. Mm-hmm. And I'm not necessarily that person who's always trying to say, like if someone sees me peering closely at a work and they came up to me and said, "What are you looking at?" It's certainly not going to be, "Well, I'm trying to evaluate the philosophical underpinnings behind this piece in such a way that I can write a dissertation." That's not my...
No.
That's not the tack I take.
No, you really are trying to figure out how somebody did that. Like, often. I can remember going into the Grant Wood exhibit with you, and we got really close to those paintings, too, and just, marveling at how he did some of his textures and how smooth the paint was. But
his technique is, and that's the thing, is that I love that Jerry Saltz is like one dog sniffing another.
Yeah, that's really what it's like. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, I want to know about you.
Yeah.
I want to know
how you achieve those results.
I want to get in close to the source of your stink and figure out how you made that. That's important.
Yeah.
I can't believe I just said that.
I can.
All right. So that's Jerry Saltz's reading for the day.
And that's really an interesting passage, given that some of the artists that we're going to look at tonight, you do that with, but there's also, and I had said this earlier when we were talking about it, there's a repulsion with some of these works, and we're still getting in close, and we're still trying to be like, how did she do that? Or how did he do that? So that's a very good reading for tonight.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I feel like that really connected with me from the making standpoint, right? Because that's just how I always function. Mm-hmm. I go out to look at work, and I appreciate bad work as much as good from the standpoint of, how did we get there?
Yeah.
How did that piece of work, how was that accomplished? And that, to me, it's frustrating to see work that I don't necessarily feel is good work, out there for the public. Not that it shouldn't be, but you see bad work and you're like, what is this doing here? Mm-hmm. But I feel like there's something to be learned from that.
Okay.
And that's the lesson today.
Yeah.
Okay. So, want to move on?
I do. I want to get into that.
Should we talk some artists? All right, so we're going to dive into looking at 3 artists tonight, and
it's a bit of a Halloween grab bag.
It's our Halloween grab bag, and we're going to start off with an artist name,
Ronit Baranga. Now, she's an Israeli artist. She's about 47-ish right now. So she's pretty I love her. I absolutely love her work. I've been following her for a little while. She has lots of shows right now, quite a few in progress. She's shown all over the world. She has several going right now. She's got one show in San Francisco, California at the Modern Gallery. It's called Midnight Garden. She also has a show in Melbourne, Australia right now. It's called All Things Sweet and Painful. I just love some of her subject material. I love how she manipulates the clay. I love the finishes. I love on this one in particular, I love the rendering on it. I can go down many rabbit holes with her.
You said clay, and we haven't even said yet that all this work is ceramic. So
Yes.
this baby that's on the screen is ceramic, and so a lot of the realism is achieved through the glazes and her sense of craft and her ability to sort of manipulate the tonality on the skin and whatnot. But we could talk about the creepiness, of course, but I think the first and foremost we should talk about is the fact that this is ceramic work, and it is not something we typically feature or think about. Like when we think about ceramicists, we think about pottery, we think about functionality. Exactly. And so,
well, even the flesh colors here makes it very, like we had been talking about this prior to the start of the show, but the flesh tones and the sensuality of this, it makes you like feel it a little bit. It doesn't look like it's hard. Normally we also think of ceramics as a hard material once it's fired. And you're not getting this at all, especially with the mobility of the fingers, with the way that she glazes the mouths. There's very lifelike quality to it. Another thing that we had been talking about was some of the finishes on the glazes that she's using in some of the under painting. She really contrasts between a matte finish, which might be some kind of underpainting, but also she uses these glossy finishes to replicate the moisture on the mucous membranes, on the tongue, on the teeth. And the way she shadows in some of these forms too gives it some depth.
And all that realism on that mouth makes the notion that this is a tart that much more fun.
Oh.
Right? Come on.
Right.
I mean, you can't overlook that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I feel like I love these. I mean, these are like these little wontons, these little dumplings.
Did you ever see Amadeus? Of course you saw Amadeus. Do you remember the scene where the woman he ends up marrying, she's with the bad guy?
Yeah.
Oh.
I haven't seen Amadeus in like 17 years.
But anyway, she's eating candy, and he explains to her that they're called nipples of Venus, and that's what this reminds me of. It just brought back a memory of a really good...
And these
really
look like they're being pulled from the bamboo basket that soup dumplings are served in. Now, if you've ever had a soup dumpling, a soup dumpling is a dumpling where the body of the dumpling contains all of the hot liquid. And so if you bite into it too fast, you get burned. There's so many little entendres going on in here, but I just love this piece. It's a really, really kind of sweet but somehow weirdly foreboding, repulsive kind of thing. I love how she combines the good with the bad. Yeah. Right?
Well, she has a lot of push-pull that we had been talking about before going on too. She's got the erotic versus repulsive. She has endearing versus outrageous. I mentioned that before. So she really plays with your push-pull. You want to get closer to examine it, just like you were saying. You want to see how it was done, but there's something about it, like you're like, ooh, like, because fingers, when you're thinking of fingers not belonging to the rest of the hand or the limb, it gets a little creepy.
Yeah, and then she takes and then, so we're talking about all these like dichotomies, and there's like this hard, soft thing going on, right? And so ceramics are supposed to be hard materials, and then she defies that delicate hardness of this teapot by collapsing it inward, almost as if it's made of some kind of like plastic or some kind of like malleable material, which I love. And so she really gets that kind of defying the materialness of the thing, right? So ceramics are no longer ceramics. Hard is no longer hard.
And it's interesting. She takes this pretty thing, like dainty ceramics, and you think tea parties and girly things, and she puts a grotesque thing going on. I mean, the hands, I mean, these hands that belong to no one, that are there manipulating the form. It's kind of, it's interesting that she's taking this really delicate thing and manipulating it.
Right, and I think there's a real danger zone in making work like this, where something like this could very easily like stray into the Disney-esque kind of, fantastical, but somehow hers remain in a slightly more macabre kind of realm, and they don't stray into that world. I mean, I'm thinking more like Addams Family.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah, what was that thing? Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So
this was one of my favorites because we have mouths on foods and sweet, and it's delicious, and there's fingers tantalizing the lips and coming out of a plate.
wow.
I love her stuff.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm just going to leave that there.
Yeah. Now, this one, I believe this one or one similar. One thing that Todd and I usually do is we're always looking at a collectible. Is a collectible. We like to collect art. We like to support artists, and I did look her up because I would love to own a piece of her artwork. And something, she has a piece similar to this. It's available through the Ben Art Gallery, which I kind of looked into. And typically something like this goes for around $2,000, which isn't terrible for a beautiful piece of artwork if you wanted to, collect art. She does have another piece that we had been looking at a little bit earlier, the Tattooed Baby. Oh, these are all gorgeous. I believe these are all from her All Things Sweet and Painful show.
I can pop ahead to the Tattooed Baby if you'd like. There we go.
There it is. Now, the Tattooed Baby is probably my favorite collection she's done. She's done several different tattooed babies in different forms. They're very hyper realistic. Her shading with them, the way that the forms, the figures, the detail. We had been talking about this earlier. We talked quite a bit in our former show when we were having all those glitches. But there's ways that you can create this that give the baby more realism, and that's like by backing the nose in felt or the ears. The thing that's most striking, this baby's it's a vulnerable infant, and it has this tattoo on it, and the tattoo is absolutely gorgeous. It's a cherry blossom motif. It's also got the redness around it as though it was tender. It's a fresh tattoo. And then when you start thinking about the whole concept of tattooing a baby, it gets really disturbing. But I love the piece, which is interesting because it's not peaceful, right? It is peaceful, but it's not peaceful.
Yeah, and there's a lot I'm thinking about in terms of this, and not all of which I'm going to go into, but yeah, why the hell would you tattoo a baby?
Yeah.
And so there's the inherent kind of, the thing that throws you off. It's like, oh, look at the beautiful tattoo.
And like you were saying before, it's one of the things that makes you draw closer because it is beautiful, but it also pushes you away because that's a very disturbing, thought. And she has a couple of these. She had another one that was cradled in hands, like the hands that she always does.
I start thinking when I look at something like this, not only of this sort of inappropriateness of tattooing the baby and how that's supposed to make you feel that unease, but then that calls to mind this kind of cultural appropriation of certain imagery that we sort of just take as tattoos. It's sort of like we always see, like Asian letters and characters and different motifs that, certain cultures just grab a hold of and throw on there. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out the cherry blossom. Now, I'm trying to associate that with, where it's from, and does it even belong here? I know it doesn't belong on a baby, but then does it belong on like a white baby? It's like there's so many different things that come up in this that are just so strange to me. I love this piece for that. Like, it really makes me think a lot.
Yep, and it is to scale. That's the other thing. So I think having it to scale as a real newborn infant actually just makes you connect with the piece a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to talk about our second artist?
Yeah, we can go ahead and get to our second artist.
I think Ronit Baranga is a really great example of where we want to take our Halloween grab bag. I love her work.
Yeah, and actually you can find her on Instagram under her name at Ronit Roni Baranga, excuse me, and just go check her out.
We'll put her information in the description below, so scroll down and just check that out. All right, let's talk about our second artist, because I really like this guy, and I think this is something. So we're looking at the work of Alex Gross, and Alex Gross has several bodies of work that you can sort of look at, and this one is a very particular element within his larger sphere of work.
Yep. Now, for Halloween, I thought that this was an appropriate body of work because it goes with the old Victorian cabinet cards. And when you think of Halloween, I often think of creepy, scary. The Victorian aesthetic definitely strikes me as that. So what he did, this was a collection that he did a couple years back. And he takes old cabinet cards that were in the late 1800s, early 1900s. They were taken with a camera for the wealthier families that could afford to do so, and then they were mounted on cardboard. What he did was he took some, and I've seen this done before. I just feel like he's probably the best at it. He covers them with a clear, glossy acrylic coating, and then he goes ahead and does an oil painting on top of it. It's a two-process oil painting because he's got to allow the paint to dry, otherwise it gets all muddy. But he starts off with the background first, he allows it to dry, and then he goes back in and he puts in some of the finer detail.
Yeah, and just to jump off of that whole idea of the cabinet card as a creepy Victorian thing, and there's a couple of reasons for that. So first of all, when these photographs were taken, they were taken on a plate, and the process of shooting the picture took time. It's not like a camera today where you can just snap the picture. The exposure took a fair amount of time, and so the subject had to hold very, very still. If they moved the slightest bit, there'd be a blur. And so you wind up with people trying to hold these images and hold their eyes open, and so they have these strange expressions on their faces, number one. And number two, there was a process that was very common back then when a family member would die, particularly a child, where the dead individual would get propped up with the other family members for that last photo. And so sometimes when I look at these, I wonder, is this person alive? And given the fact that we've pulled this one for Halloween and that Alex Gross does this with these, I think works perfectly. Now, in his painting, and the way in which he kind of tackles the painting on these while leaving the old faces, he does this amazing job of hanging on to that kind of question, that kind of unanswered question about who is in there.
Well, it was when I was watching a video on how he did them too, even for when he was painting over the hair. Like there was one that he did with the Joker from Batman, and he left in quite a bit of the hair, and then he just like lightly covered the highlights in green. And I was like, wow, he's really trying to preserve some of this individual who had once been here. And I love that. The other thing that makes this apropos to Halloween is that the costume element, the superheroes. Alex Gross is really into pop culture. He's a pop culture surrealist. He does some lowbrow. We were talking about that before.
Yeah, so we use that word lowbrow, and we don't want to come off sounding like we're using that word in a demeaning sense. Lowbrow pop surrealism is a genre of art making, and so when we say lowbrow, we're referring to that whole kind of world of image making.
Yeah. But come to think of it, like Victorian too, they have a couple different practices that make them macabre. I don't know if you've ever seen the hair jewelry, in which they would clip the hair from a deceased person, and then they would braid it in this very intricate braid and then encase it in glass, and it became a gorgeous piece of jewelry.
Oh, wow.
They're very rare. They're highly collectible. They go for thousands of dollars. But they took this way of memorializing and cherishing death in a way. Like they held on to it as best they could by making these mementos after people had passed. The cabinet cards was more, to get a picture, and that was the photography technique back in the day. But it makes it very... Oh, look, that's Daenerys.
Daenerys Targaryen. Yeah.
But it makes it very, relevant to...
He's also tying these pop culture icons to this kind of past, right? And so what he's doing is he's sort of weirdly rooting them in a past that they don't necessarily have. I mean, Daenerys Targaryen's been around for less than 10 years, even though she's set in a realm that is, who knows when that took place. But she kind of, he by doing this, he kind of takes her and establishes her to a past that suggests that maybe she's been around forever, which is a very strange thing. It recontextualizes her character. I think there's another one in here. Yeah, here's the Borg from Star Trek, and oddly, he's holding a Rubik's Cube. Which, he weirdly takes these things and contextualizes them in a way that gives them a long past that somehow renews the character from the photograph itself, right? He's weirdly blending a living thing with a dead thing and infusing that with a different time context. I'm really having trouble explaining that.
No, I understand that also. I mean, all these cabinet cards, these people are long gone. None of these people are alive today.
Right.
So we understand that these people have passed away. But there's a certain immortality to them. I kind of understand what you're saying, but goes deep, man. Really
that goes deep, man. Well, so here's the thing. I want to go back to the X-Wing pilot. The other thing I think that would be a fun process in Alex Gross's work is, I don't know, you hit a couple flea markets, you hit a few garage sales, you grab a bunch of these for $1 a piece or 3 for $5 or whatever, and then you bring them home and you spend time with them. And I can't say that this is how his practice works, but you call on your memory of all of your favorite fandom.
Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, where was this guy? Is this guy the Joker?
Yeah.
Is this guy piloting an X-Wing?
Yeah.
Is this guy a Borg? And then you kind of like apply their facial expression, the way that part of their hair is, and you throw them in this, you try to contextualize them correctly.
Right.
Which I love about this.
Yeah.
I love this as Dave. Is that Dave from 2001: A Space Odyssey? Was it Dave? I'm sorry, Dave. Hal's not going to let you do that.
Yes.
So, and there's just, like this guy as
Spock.
Well, he's not necessarily Spock.
I'm sorry.
Right? Well, hang on. He's a Vulcan, or he could be a Romulan, right? Romulans and Vulcans are very closely related.
I think he meant Spock.
You are wearing a Star Trek uniform. He probably meant Spock. I'm doing that to save my relationship. This is Spock. I love you. Okay, so, but I love that. I think it's a stretch for this guy to get to Spock or a Romulan or a Vulcan, but it works.
Okay.
It works.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but anyway, so this show was a long time ago. He does other pieces that are much bigger. They're very refined oil paintings. They do have a lot of characters in pop culture. You'll see themes going with, he'll have the whole Star Wars cast from people right in the foreground all the way receding to the background with Starbucks coffee and Dunkin' Donuts and Big Gulp and all these things that we recognize in pop culture. They're really fun and very beautiful, lush paintings. He is represented by, not represented, but he's shown at the Jonathan Levine Gallery and Corey Halford Gallery. He's often featured in many publications such as Juxtapose, High Fructose. These very cards have been published in a book called Transformations. It's available on his website, theartofalexgross.com. He has a limited edition there where he signed it, but you can also go to Amazon, which I did today because I wanted it, and it's coming tomorrow, so I'm really excited. So you could check that out too. Now, also on that note, I did look up, again, we're talking about collectability, and I would love to have a piece of his. There's only a couple available. This collection sold out. So I did see a couple cars. They run around $1,200, which is actually pretty good.
Yeah, I would love to have a piece of this
I would
work.
love to have one of these.
So why don't we move on to artist number 3?
Yeah, let's move
I
on
think this
to
is a good
artist
time
number
to
3.
do that.
Sure.
And this artist is a very different kind of artist. Still maintaining that kind of strange sort of, I hate to use the word creepy, but...
Well, it's the creepy's not a bad word.
It's not a bad word.
It's an aesthetic that elicits a...
It's unsettling.
It's unsettling, and it's sometimes it makes people take a step back, which is to me a definition of repulsive.
This artist's name is Tim Hawkinson, and I want to go back to this first image right now because there's a little bit of explaining to do on this one. So first of all, Tim Hawkinson is primarily a sculptor, and his work it's all over the map. He does a lot of large pieces.
Well, his career is very long. He's 60 years old. He's been doing this for a long time. You can go down so many rabbit holes with him. We're probably going to have a whole show on him because to me, it was bottomless. Some of his shows were so good that I spent like an hour looking at all of his artwork, and I'm like, wow, there's so much to talk about with him.
Yeah, and so this piece, when you walk into this gallery, and here's this foot sticking up out of the floor, and he does a lot where he braids electrical cords, and in this case, the electrical cord which powers this thing, because it is actually moving, you can't see it yet, but it becomes this kind of braided, almost like friendship bracelet around the ankle of the piece, which is kind of amusing, a little bit of craft thrown in.
Now, did you hear about this particular piece?
Well, I've seen this particular piece, but you must have something.
Well, I believe this piece was featured in the show called Family Resemblance, when it was his daughter actually heavily influenced it. She had been a brownie. She was selling Girl Scout cookies. And he did a whole series of sculptures that was influenced by her. So he named each piece after a Girl Scout cookie, either it was a current one or a retired one. This was the element. He uses a lot of found objects in his sculptures. And with this one, the braided wire, it is supposed to represent a friendship friendship bracelet.
Okay, I'm just pulling that one out of the ether.
No, that really is, because that was his daughter at the time. Like, that's the era that she was in. I don't recall the specific name of this, but it's supposed to represent a particular cookie in that whole time.
Well, so the thing I love about this piece is you've got this giant foot, and this thing is, if I remember correctly, when I saw this in the gallery, and it was quite some time ago, this was taller than me, because when you stand under those toes, you wind up looking up at those wheels that are underneath each toe. And as we get closer, it's very hard to see in this. I've got a better image coming up next. But you stare up at these toes, and then there is the underside of each toe, which is in fact rotating like this. And it's got this very tactile print etched into the surface of the toe. And so it's almost like if this thing were to be able to be dragged along the sand or dragged through the mud, it would create this infinitely long toe print. Such a strange and wonderful piece. The mechanics that are in these pieces are often very evident, exposed, and very noisy.
Well, all of his pieces have, well, I'm not going to say all. A lot of his pieces have this kinetic feel to them. I had heard somebody it was a YouTube video I think I was watching. There was an art critic that just kind of came into the gallery. He had a show at Pace. He wanted to do a quick run through, and he was saying, because all of his pieces have that found object, robotic thing going on, he's like, wow, I'd never want one of these pieces of equipment to be something that I get, used in an operation or anything like that. Like, there's this like funky, haphazard way that they seem to be conjoined, like some of the materials that he finds.
Yeah, I mean, there's both an exquisite sense of craft, but an intentional intentional clunkiness to some of it that I think works really, really well. So, for example, well, it's not this particular slide, but we're going to see another piece in here where, when you look at the mechanics of it, it is absolutely exquisite. But at the same time, it has a kind of, this is the piece here. So this is a portrait, a quick GIF of this portrait that has all these mechanical elements in it that shape or change the shape of the face, and not in naturalistic ways. And so you wind up with this very sort of uneasy gaze at this very, very large head that is, and also this GIF that we're watching right now suggests that the motion is short and quick, but it's not. It unfolds slowly over time. This face evolves as you're standing there, almost as if he's contorting before your very eyes.
Yeah, and it continues to go around too. With the GIF, sometimes you see the repetitive motions, but it keeps going.
Yeah, they're rotating.
This was one of his most famous pieces.
Yeah.
It's called A Motor. And when he did this piece, he took a couple of digital photographs of his face. And then what he was saying was that he just had a plain face with none of the, like, no eyes, stuff like that. And then he went back in and he put the pieces of the eyes and the eyelids and the mouth and stuff, and all the little mechanics of it, just constantly rotate them to create all these emotions that actual normal human faces can't even emote. So yeah, this was a really good.
These are a couple of shots from the range of which this thing is capable of sort of getting to. And I've actually stood before this piece. I've seen this live, and it's really unsettling to watch him.
How big is it? Is it a big one?
It's large, yeah. It's his head is fairly enormous when you stand in front of it. I'd say that, I don't know the exact dimensions off the top of my head. If I recall, I'd say the piece is probably close to 5 feet tall, but I'm totally pulling a guess out of that. It's been a very long time since I've stood before this one. Wow. And here's a slightly closer GIF of the eye, the movement of the eye, and the crafting of that eye.
Yep, and you can even see, like, the eyelid itself. How many pieces is that? 6 to 8, and that's really what's making some of these.
Right, but I think the other thing that really makes this, though, is that he probably could have made such a machine where all the mechanics were hidden inside, given technology, right? But he chose to put all of these elements on the outside, almost as if the manipulation of the face is necessary, right?
It's very Clockwork Orange.
Yes, it is very Clockwork Orange. Absolutely, absolutely. We got a few more by him that sort of follow similar themes. Elements of the body are very important in this work.
Yeah, and in a couple of his shows, like if we go back to that one show I was talking about with the family resemblance, some of his pieces were made with using his hands, like any impression from his body. This piece
is tiny. It's the skeleton of a bird, a tiny bird, a baby bird, like a just hatched bird.
Guess what it's made of?
Can you guess what this is made of?
Actually, maybe that. No, we gotta.
Yeah, we can't do that.
We can't do that.
So this is made entirely from Tim Hawkinson's fingernail clippings.
Isn't that amazing?
It's repulsive, but at the same time, very accurate. And if you looked closely upon this piece, it would be very hard to tell that it wasn't real. I mean, there's this weird kind of connection he makes with materials, like the braided cords, the fingernail clippings. There are other pieces by him where he uses latex.
Well, if you think, nails are a fossil.
They're bones.
Element. Yeah, are bones.
Well, are they bones? They're bodily cast-offs.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you just say they're keratin deposits?
I don't know.
That's amazing.
I'm a nurse. I'm not quite sure.
She does have the sciences. She's got the sciences uniform on.
But you know what? Honestly, I'd have to look into what nails are specifically made of. But they are remnants. They are fossils. And then he created this bird remnant. There was another artist who used to use her fingernails. I was telling you that she would sculpt really remarkable things, but we'll save that for
Well, I
another
think
day.
with Hawkinson, he did this once, right? He used his fingernails, he made the bird, he gets it done, he moves on. He is constantly engaged in this infinite experimentation with materials, subject matter, oftentimes with the body. But I like the way his work is varied and he moves across. I mean, look at this.
Well, that's the other thing. He doesn't really subscribe to any particular medium. You will find him in everything. He is a painter. He's a sculptor. He's a photographer. He installs one of his most impressive pieces was at the Getty, and that was that huge organ. If you've
right, the
seen
one
it,
that
it was created out of balloons and
it was plastic drop cloths, and
right.
it was like a
and then the dryer hose connections,
Right.
and then it actually had the organ music that was painted and going through, and it was really phenomenal. But he specializes in just about everything. He tinkers, and
I love that you just used that word. He's a tinkerer on so many levels.
So many levels.
Yeah, and I resonate with that in my own work. I find myself coming to materials oftentimes with no intention, but just an inherent interest in what it is I'm picking up and what I'm looking at, and how it may or may not go together with something else. And then making those connections is where it's at.
And I think that's it for him. I think the exploration is just as important as the finished product.
Yeah. So, so these are three, I think, really interesting artists to sort of
and I
spend
think
some
that
time with.
They're pretty strong. I would like to do a show on him
On him.
because he goes deep.
Yeah, I agree. So, three artists tonight. Ronit
Ronit Baranga,
and Alex
Gross,
and Tim Hawkinson are our three artists for tonight. We're going to put information on all of them down in the description. We stream every Tuesday night on the large glass on Twitch.
Twitch TV.
When we're not having massive mechanical failure, which we had tonight.
I just don't think it could handle all of this tonight.
I know. I mean, look at us.
Yeah, we're out of this world.
You're out of this world. I'm mildly acceptable. I mean, I'm trying to do Captain Picard and I couldn't even shave my head.
Oh, well, that's okay. Yeah, that's all right.
All right, well, listen, we want to, first of all, please leave a follow, subscribe to our channel, come visit us on Twitch on Tuesday nights. We stream there. And thanks for watching. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you next time.
Yeah.
And we'll talk to you then.
Yeah.
All right, take care. Oh, cheers.
Cheers, baby. Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.